My daughter urged me to cheat on my husband. Now he's gone and I'm left with ashes and regret sitting at my desk. I began to reflect on the 30 years since Maggie and I got married, rewinding the memories to our honeymoon and all the wonderful moments that stand out in my life. Remembering that time in Hawaii with Maggie fills me with nostalgia and gratitude. It was truly amazing. It was truly amazing, a captivating chapter that I will always cherish. From the very beginning, it felt as if we had entered a magical world, leaving behind the hustle and bustle of everyday life and finding a peace that is hard to describe. Walking along the beach with the sand between our toes and the sound of the waves whispering secrets, we were surrounded by beauty. With the sweet scent of plumia, a constant reminder of the love and tranquility that surrounded us. But it wasn't just the breathtaking views that made our honeymoon unforgettable. It was the moments we shared together. Exploring lush jungles and discovering hidden waterfalls felt like encountering treasures of Mother Nature. Standing together, we were in awe of the beauty and tranquility that surrounded us. Each sunset painted the sky with vibrant colors, and as we held each other close, we were overwhelmed with love and devotion. The evenings were like a romantic melody, with candlelit dinners on the beach under the starry sky, enjoying fresh seafood and local delicacies. But what made it truly magical was seeing each other again. Hawaii was not just a destination for us. It became the heart of our love story, filled with moments and dreams that we shared. Looking back on our honeymoon, I am reminded of the beauty and depth of our relationship that rekindled our love, strengthened our bond, and gave us moments of pure happiness and peace. 30 years later, deep in thought, my secretary walked in and found me staring out the window. "Jason, what's making you so happy lately? You won the lottery," she joked. It hit me that I had been smiling contentedly for 2 weeks. I shared that my wife had been especially loving and attentive, making me feel valued and appreciated. It felt like a second honeymoon, and I couldn't wait to spend more time with her, acting like a teenager in love. I didn't want this happiness to end. Maggie and I have a solid marriage, but after 30 years, excitement can fade into routine. But Maggie had been unusually affectionate, seeking intimacy almost every night. I never suspected her affection meant anything beyond rekindling our marriage. I planned a surprise romantic evening. I left work early with a smile. I got 2 dozen roses, her favorite wine, and chocolate-covered cherries. Tonight, I'll show my love and surprise her with a 7-night cruise to celebrate our enduring love. I entered the house through the garage, and instead of finding my wife Maggie, our 29-year-old daughter Brandy was sitting at the table. I smiled, kissed her on the forehead, and asked, "Hey baby, where's your mommy?" 2 weeks earlier, Brandy had had a conversation with her mother. "Mom, I'm not sure about this. I love Daddy very much, and I'm afraid if I go through with this, I'm going to hurt him." "Brandy, Daddy loves you, and he'll understand. You said it yourself. You need something more than what you've had, and Daddy's not getting any younger. I know he'll understand your needs, and he'll allow you to have this once-in-a-lifetime pleasure, Mom." This one-time pleasure, Mom. There is no way I can face Dad and tell him I am going on a date with another man. I just can't do it. Then let me do it. Alexander will be waiting for you at the restaurant at 7 p.m., and you will be ready to go by 6 p.m. When Dad gets home, I will explain everything to him, and you will get the experience you crave. Honey, I agreed to this date, but I have doubts. This feels wrong, and I shouldn't go. How will I be able to look your father in the eye for the next 2 weeks knowing that I agreed to this date? 2 weeks knowing that I agreed to go on a date with another man? Well, I suggest you don't tell him anything. Show him how much you love him during these 2 weeks. Let him know he has nothing to worry about. And when I explain everything, he will understand it's not about love, just new friendships and a little fun. Reach out to him, rock his world. And when I explain the situation that night, he will welcome you back with open arms. Dad loves you and is willing to do anything for you. He always has. He gave you what you wanted. He showed his love for you. Probably yes. Maybe you're right. It's just a date, and it doesn't mean I'm leaving your father for another man. Having a fun night out after 30 years shouldn't be a problem. I'm going to show your dad how wonderful he is and how much I love him every night until the date night. Then when I come back, I'm going to try to make him the happiest man in the world. Mom, just make him feel loved and appreciated. He's a great guy and he'll give that to you. 1. Thanks, baby, and say hi to Mike. When are you two going to give us grandchildren? Soon. We've already talked about it and plan to start working on it in a few months, Brandy said before she went home. Maggie found herself alone in the art studio Jason had built for her. Behind her house, facing his latest project, she struggled with creativity lately, burdened by thoughts of being with another man. But Bry's advice echoed in her mind, and suddenly her brushes danced on the canvas, breathing life into vibrant colors and emotional landscapes. Confident that she was doing the right thing for herself, Maggie sat in solitude and felt peace wash over her guilt. Jason may be upset at first, but I believe I can make him see that I truly adore him, and he has been an extraordinary husband and father. I will be the best wife and demonstrate my love for him. That night, as part of her plan to shower him with affection, after her shower, she dressed in his favorite baby nightgown, styled her hair, and applied makeup to greet Jason when he returned home. Dressed in her nightgown and high heels, Maggie led him to the bedroom where she undressed him and surprised him with a long-neglected act of enthusiasm. His smile filled her with warmth and happiness and made her wonder why she hadn't done this before. Jason, this was the best welcome home in a long time. What's the occasion, honey? I just wanted to show you how special you are and how much I love you. Did you like it? I did. It's been so long I forgot how much. I missed it. They pulled each other onto the bed and shared passionate kisses for minutes. It was the most fulfilling intimacy they had experienced in years. It led Maggie to reconsider her date with Alexander. Over the next few weeks, their intimacy reached new heights and Jason transformed into a happier man, smiling, laughing, and showing affection as they went. Laughing and showing affection as before, Maggie found herself happier than she had been in a long time and began to reconsider her plans for the date. She even discussed the positive changes with Brandy, asking if she still needed the planned experience. Mom, this is fantastic, but don't rush to cancel. Let's see how the next 2 weeks unfold. Just enjoy each other and see where it goes. There's no need to cancel yet. We'll reassess in 2 weeks, and you can always cancel at the last minute. I'm sure Alexander will understand. But remember, this opportunity may not come again. All right, maybe you're right. Remind me of Alexander's situation. When his wife Mary was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor, he took time off from work and stayed by her side until she died. She was the love of his life, and after her death he was lost. He became depressed and withdrew from everything except work. When Mary and I suggested that he start dating, he confessed that he didn't know how to be with anyone else. Listening to him made me cry, and I realized that I might have a solution for both of you. Brandy went on to tell her mother about Alexander's deep admiration for her and his longing for companionship. So you see, Mom, he thinks you're beautiful and would love to spend time with you. I'll give him your number, and the two of you can set up a date. He's about 10 years younger than you, and I know you'll hit it off. He just needs someone to talk to and befriend. He just needs someone to communicate with and be friends with, and I think you can help each other. The next day, Alexander called Maggie, and after a wonderful conversation, he invited her to be his escort and spend the night with him, complimenting her beauty in the photo and expressing how wonderful it would be for her to go on a date with him. She felt like a schoolgirl. The excitement of doing something so different and his flirting made her feel butterflies in her stomach. She agreed to the date and told him she was looking forward to meeting him. He said he would pick her up, but she replied that she would rather meet him at the restaurant. They texted daily, flirting more and more as the night of their date approached. Maggie's text messages would not have passed the simplest test of a woman's fidelity. She was constantly excited, imagining what she had to do, trying not to forget Jason. And every night she put more and more energy into their lovemaking. Now Jason walked around with a grin on his face and Maggie walked around with an uncontrollable desire for sex. This was a new level she was enjoying beyond her dreams. I loved my daughter and thought she was the most beautiful girl in the world. I was so proud of how she had grown into the woman she was today. I wished I had spent more time with her as she grew up, but I worked hard to give her a good life and try to be there for her as much as possible. I smiled when I saw her, but I was embarrassed. Sweetheart, what are you doing here and where's your mom? I asked as she watched me sit down. 2 dozen roses, a bottle of wine and a box of chocolates. I have a special surprise for your mom tonight, and I can't wait to see her. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out itineraries and tickets for a 7-day cruise on the new yacht I'd bought. I'm taking your mom on a 7-day cruise, and I can't wait to see her. I can't wait to see the look on her face when she finds out. Don't say anything when she gets home. I want to surprise her, Dad said. Hearing her call me Daddy always made me smile, remembering her as a little girl sitting on my lap, but something seemed wrong. Tears welled up in her eyes and she was out of breath, clearly worried about what she had to tell me. Dad, we need to talk, she said. A tear sliding down her cheek, concern flashed across my face. No, Mom's fine. Please sit down and let me explain. I replied after a pause. She spoke again. Dad, you know how much Mom loves you, and she told me how great things have been between the two of you lately. Yes, and I love her too. That's why I want to show her how much she means to me. When I saw her tears, I realized that her news was not what I expected. I'm really sorry, Dad. But Mom went on to say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Daddy. But Mom went out on a date. I sat in stunned silence, trying to process her words. Her tears flowed as anger ignited inside of me. Brandy, what are you saying? Where's your mom? I demanded, my voice loud enough to make her recoil in fear. Mom loves you very much, Daddy, and I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but Mom went out on a date with another man and won't be back until tomorrow, so she couldn't tell you herself. So I volunteered to break the news to you. I volunteered to tell you because she didn't want to hurt you. It's just for one night, and she'll be back tomorrow. Is this some kind of joke? I can't believe this. Your mother would never do anything to betray me like this. We were so close, and loving this can't be real. Dad, she loves you. She just needed something more in life. At least once after 30 years of marriage, nothing is going to change between the two of you, except maybe she will love you more. I love you even more for understanding. I stared at my daughter. Brandy, why are you involved in this? Your mom shouldn't have dragged you into this, and I should be talking to her, not you. How did she drag you into all of this? Dad, Mom and I have always been close, and we tell each other everything. She said things had slowed down between you two in the bedroom, and she no longer felt one of my friends. Dad lost his wife a few years ago, and he also needed companionship. I stood up abruptly, knocking over my chair. What the hell are you talking about? You set your mother up with another man. Is that what you're telling me? She lowered her head and stared at the floor. She remained silent as I paced the kitchen trying to figure out the situation. Damn it, Brandy. Answer me, I yelled, towering over her. Did you set her up? This is my wife, your mother, on a date with your boyfriend's father because of you. At my angry outburst, saliva flew out of my mouth. I'm really sorry, Daddy, but yes, it sounds bad when you say it like that, but I did it out of love for my boyfriend's parents. Holy hell, what have you done? Love for your boyfriend's parents? What about your love for me? Am I just some trash you can disregard and expect me to accept whatever you come up with? Where is she now? And why did you say she won't be back until tomorrow, Dad? They went to a restaurant, I don't know which one, and then they're spending the night together. Just this once. She'll be back tomorrow, and Dad, she only loves you. She's been telling me for 2 weeks how much she loves you and doesn't want you to get hurt. It's just one date and one night. She thought you'd understand and give her this one chance. I believed her newfound affection over the past 2 weeks was genuine, but now you're saying it was just her way of assuaging her guilt. Well, this is not going to end well, I assure you. She's still in tears begging. Dad, it's not like that at all. She never pretended or hurt you. On the contrary, she did everything she could to show you she loved you. Dad, can't you give her one night? You know she loves you and can't imagine life without you. Imagine life without you. She mentioned how she was looking forward to your retirement and spending time with your grandchildren. Mike and I are planning on having kids, and we need both of you. Well, isn't it ironic that the ship sailed when she agreed to go on a date with someone who isn't me? Who is this guy? He's my friend Mary's dad, and he's really nice. You'll like him, Daddy. I think you have a lot in common. Oh, sure. We could be best pals? So you think I could be friends with a man who knowingly dates a married woman? My wife? Maybe we can be drinking buddies and I can let him borrow your mom on the weekends. Is that your plan for me?" Brandy slumped in her chair, realizing a grave mistake in her plan. My anger, expressed in words she never wanted to hear, shook her to the core, sending a chill down her spine. As she huddled up after pacing the room, I managed to regain control. I regained control and turned to my daughter with venom in my voice. My pain and anguish was evident, making her feel small and guilty for her part in the ordeal. "Listen carefully, Brandy. Leave now. I need time alone to understand what you two have done to me tonight. I do not want to see or hear from you. No calls, no messages ever. Your betrayal is unforgivable. You are dead to me, understand? I am no longer your father, and you are no longer my daughter. Get out of my house and never come back." Brandy wept openly, her head in her hands. "Daddy, please don't say that. I love you and I want to stay here tonight. Mommy and I plan to stay with you. We don't want you to be alone. The disrespect you have shown makes me wonder if you ever really respected or loved me as your father. You are your mother's daughter. I have worked tirelessly all these years to provide for both of you, and this is the thanks I receive. You both, and this is the thanks I get. Turns out I'm just a meal ticket never earned respect from either of you." Amidst tears and sobs, she pleaded, "Dad, I love you. Please reconsider. Let Mom explain everything tomorrow. You had 30 wonderful years together, and I know you love her. Give her this one thing, and she won't leave you. Dad, she loves you. She can have whatever she wants, but she will never have me again. Forgiveness is beyond me, beyond me. Everyone involved will face consequences, including the man who took my wife. Now go. You have shown your true colors. You still have your mother. Nothing changes for you." To Brandy, "You are no longer my daughter." She left with tears streaming down her face. She fled the house in agony of pain. She had never known, she never imagined her father's reaction would be so severe. If he truly disowned her for the first time, she realized she may have crossed a line. She may have crossed a line by helping her mother with this plan. She knew he loved them both, but his anger was clear, and she prayed for his forgiveness. Right after Brandy left, I called Maggie's cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I left several messages begging her to call back and come home. When my calls went unanswered, even after a few drinks, I resorted to texting her the same plea. Still no response. By 2 a.m. It dawned on me that she wasn't coming back or answering my calls. Exhausted with self-pity, I stared blankly at the TV, bombarded with more bleak news. My world turned into a nightmare, instantly reflecting on our 30-year marriage, the highs, the lows, the mishaps. Though our sex life had become predictable, there were no complaints, and after we broke up, we always hugged, drifted off into each other's arms, and every day we exchanged I love yous and rarely argued. Yet now it seemed that those words held little meaning. Looking out at the art studio I had built for Maggie, a sanctuary where she had poured her creativity for 2 decades, I realized that it held more meaning than I did. The conversation with Brandy hit me like a ton of bricks. Learning she wanted to be with another man blindsided me. No warning, despite years of hard work to support my family, I failed to notice she wasn't happy with our marriage. It stung to know she shared it with Brandy instead of talking to me. Fueling my anger and humiliation, I reflected on my life, my home, and my future. My life, my home, and my future. I remembered the house and property I inherited from my grandfather in my name alone before our marriage. No mortgage. Made me think. Fueled by alcohol and anger, I plotted ways to hurt Maggie the way she hurt me. I stared into her studio. A surge of power washed over me, perhaps from the alcohol or the pain of betrayal. With renewed vigor, I sprang into action. I made countless trips to our bedroom. I gathered all her belongings and moved them into the studio. Shoes, clothes, jewelry, all piled high. Shoes, clothes, jewelry, all piled in the center. I then gathered photo albums, including our wedding pictures, and placed them at the top of the pile. Remembering items in the attic, I retrieved her wedding dress, baby clothes, and more. Adding to the growing pile, it amazed me how much she had amassed over the years. I removed her pictures from the walls and added them to the pile. Sculptures, sketches, all her cherished possessions, now part of the ever-growing pile. It was already 5 a.m. 00 A. I decided to wait until 6 a.m. before taking action. to give her a chance to call back or respond to my calls and messages. If I didn't hear from her or she wasn't home, I would proceed with my plan. I double-checked the house to make sure everything important to her was in the studio. 5:30 a.m. I got a 5-gallon gas can from the garage and headed to the studio to prepare for 6 a.m. In the meantime, I went online, canceled our joint credit cards, transferred money to our accounts, withdrew cash from the safe, packed a couple of suitcases and loaded them into my truck. I planned to stay away until the lawyer sorted things out, giving her another 5 minutes to return at 65 with my last hope fading. I poured gasoline over the pile and along the walls of the studio. After a deep sigh and brief hesitation, I struck a match and ignited her belongings. The fire spread quickly. Visible from the street before I could escape, her world burned quickly as I drove down the highway. Apropos, the realization hit me, compounded by my distraught state. Overwhelmed with grief, tears flowed. I realized that my once happy marriage had met the same fate as the studio, unexpectedly consumed by flames. The fire spread to the back porch, endangering the house. Fortunately, firefighters contained the blaze, saving the house from total destruction, but it suffered significant smoke damage and needed repairs before it could be occupied again. Meanwhile, I checked into a highway motel 90 miles away from the charred remains of my marriage, paying cash to avoid detection, exhausted and overwhelmed. I turned off my phone and collapsed into a deep sleep until noon. When I awoke, I found dozens of missed calls and texts from Brandy, Maggie, and the sheriff. After leaving the Uber, I met Alexander at the restaurant, both nervous and excited to see the handsome young man waiting for me at the front desk. He smiled when he saw me, appreciating my little black dress, black sheer tights, and matching high heels, his gaze lingering on my exposed cleavage, accentuated by my black bra. Earlier in the day, I had spent several hours at the salon making sure my hair and makeup were perfect. I wanted this one occasion to be exciting, memorable, and flawless for him. My companion seemed pleased with what he saw, and the way he adjusted his growing manhood underscored his reaction. I felt more confident as I realized he liked what he saw. I greeted him with a tender kiss. We started at the bar, sitting on bar stools, and when I stood up I noticed his gaze traveling down my nylon-covered legs to my panties. We exchanged smiles as he ordered our drinks. I decided to turn off my phone to avoid any interruptions. I was aware that this night was a one-time event and resolved to enjoy every moment of it. There was an undeniable chemistry between us, and we talked like old friends. I found myself touching his arm and flirting, actions I rarely did with anyone, including Jason. I was determined to unleash my inner confidence and enjoy the experience. After finishing our second glass, the gracious hostess informed us that our table was ready. The dinner was delightful and I enjoyed our conversation and time together. When he asked if I would like to spend the night with him, I took off my heels and teasingly placed my foot between his legs. His smile widened as he noticed my red toenails peeking through the sheer nylon covering my foot, and he suggested it was time to go. Holding my hand, he led me to his pre-booked hotel room as the elevator doors opened. As the elevator doors opened on the 14th floor, the reality of what I was about to do hit me, and fleeting thoughts of Jason crossed my mind. Sensing my hesitation, Alexander pulled me close to his sturdy frame. Meeting his gaze, he bestowed upon me a romantic kiss unlike any I had ever experienced. In that moment, all thoughts of my husband and marriage faded away. Tonight I belonged to him, ready to embrace and revel in this experience. Once inside the room, he wasted no time in unzipping my dress as it fell to the floor. Once in the room, he wasted no time in unzipping my dress as it fell to the floor. He took off his own clothes and stood in front of me. Turning me around, he praised my appearance and removed my bra before laying me down on the bed. The experience was so sensual and loving, I was eagerly anticipating what would come next. On my knees, I spent 10 minutes admiring his body. Overwhelmed, he quickly removed my pantyhose and insisted that I put my heels back on, finding them alluring, which made me feel Somewhat provocative throughout our intimacy, he showered me with kisses with remarkable skill. I thought I should get Jason to do this. It's so tempting. Oh no. Compare again. Enough, he said. I love you, Maggie. His unexpected declaration touched me deeply, evoking an almost religious feeling that moved me to tears of joy. We made love several times that night and again in the morning, each encounter as passionate as the last. It marked the pinnacle of my sexual experiences, and I was content to allow it with Alexander as Maggie. As I said last night, I meant it. You're incredibly sensual and sexy, and I think I love you. I want to spend more time with you. Can we meet again? Apprehension gripped me, and I responded gently, Alexander, it was amazing, and you're a wonderful man. But I'm happily married, and I can't repeat this. It was a one-time thing, and I cherished it. Maggie, please think about it before you reject me. Your husband doesn't seem to mind, and I can make you happy. Just think about it before you decide. Okay, I'll think about it. But for now, this is the best I can offer you. With another deep kiss, he held me close and I surrendered to his embrace. If I weren't married to Jason, I would be with Alexander right now. But Jason is my husband, and I hoped he could forgive me for what I had just done. After breakfast, we left the hotel, and as Alexander drove me home, I decided to turn on my phone, which had been off since our date the night before. To my shock, it was flooded with missed calls and texts. Among the messages, Jason hit me particularly hard, causing a sharp sense of guilt. The realization of his suffering, for which I felt responsible, brought tears to my eyes. Before I had a chance to move on to the next message, my phone rang just as we entered my neighborhood. It was my child. Anxiously asking for my whereabouts, I reassured her, saying I was almost home, only to be informed of a fire at our house. My immediate concern shifted to her father, who, according to my child, was missing. No one knew his whereabouts, and he was not responding to calls. With a sinking feeling, I promised to call back as soon as I arrived, deeply disturbed by the unfolding situation. As Alexander turned the corner onto my street, I saw a fire truck and police in front of our house. I did not see any damage to the front of the house and asked the firefighters what happened. Are you the owner of the house? He asked, as all the neighbors were watching me as I stood with an unfamiliar handsome man. My companion said, yes, I am Maggie Spencer. Well, Mrs. Spencer, we were able to save the house. Only the back porch was damaged, but I'm afraid you won't be able to stay here. The majority of the damage was to the little cottage behind your house. I'm afraid it's completely lost. I felt my legs give out when Alexander caught me and helped me sit on the curb. My studio, is it damaged? I'm sorry, Mrs. Spencer. All that's left of it is smoldering ashes. We're trying to determine the cause of the fire, but in the meantime, the police detective has some questions for you. I quickly got up and ran to the back of the house before Sergeant Wilson could ask me any questions. Mrs. Spencer, do you know what happened here? Sergeant Wilson asked. No, I wasn't here last night and I have no idea. Are you her husband? He asked, turning to Alexander. No, just a friend. I felt my face turn red with embarrassment as the sergeant gave me a knowing look and asked where my husband was. I said I didn't know. When he asked where I was last night, I timidly said I was with Alexander at the Hilton Hotel in the city center. The looks the sergeant and his assistant threw at me made me realize the seriousness of my situation. I had just admitted that I had not spent the night with my husband, who had also disappeared. The detective now had questions. Mrs. Spencer, are you and your husband separated? You and your husband are separated. Do you know where he was last night? No, we are a happily married couple, I replied. And then I realized how stupid it sounded after admitting that I spent the night with another man. Do you know where he is? No, he doesn't answer calls. We want to talk to him. So if you talk to him, please give him my number, he said, handing me his business card. I was shaking with anger and fear, anger at the loss of my sanctuary and all the work I had created over the years. It was all gone forever. Fear to think that Jason could be so angry to do this and what it would mean to my marriage. I needed to talk to him as soon as possible. I called Brandy. Brandy, do you know where your father is? No, I haven't talked to him since last night. Why didn't you stay here with him like we had planned? When I heard these words, I felt a chill run through my body. Jason would never say such words, and if he did, it would be even worse than I imagined. When I entered the house, I noticed smoke damage on the walls and detected a foul odor lingering in our home. It was obvious that living here under such conditions was impossible. As I walked through our residence, I decided to gather clothes and some personal items for a few days, but when I entered the bedroom, I was alarmed to find everything missing. Causing panic to rise within me, I realized that all my clothes, shoes, and personal items were missing. All my clothes, shoes, and personal items were gone. My heart sank. I searched my nightstand for my wedding rings, only to find them missing. Why had I left my rings behind? What was I thinking? If Jason saw them on my dresser, he might assume I had left him in our marriage. How foolish and selfish of me. In a state of complete panic, I frantically searched every room in the house, only to discover that all my possessions were gone. A horrible thought crossed my mind. Had he really destroyed everything? Was there nothing left? I rushed out of the house. I returned to the studio to examine the wreckage of my marriage. To the studio to examine the remains more closely. I spotted picture frames and partially destroyed clothing amidst the debris. It was obvious that Jason had not only accepted my absence, but had erased everything that meant something to me, effectively cutting me out of his life in one fell swoop. I called Brandy in tears, recounting what had happened and expressing my need for a place to stay. Alexander quickly offered me a place to stay, but he was the last person I wanted to see. Politely, I declined, explaining that I needed solitude, and asked him to leave. Hurt by my abruptness, he left, leaving me to regret my actions and the man I had spent the night with. Though I knew I was to blame, I couldn't help but blame him for my selfish act of betrayal when the real blame was mine. Brandy, I lost your father. Mom, don't say that, Dad. He burned everything. My clothes, my paintings, my studio. He left me with nothing. Not even a place to live. He ignores my calls and won't answer. I hurt him the most, and I don't blame him. What I did is unforgivable. I shouldn't have gone on that date. I should have just talked to him. We could have worked things out. My selfishness drove him away. If I were in his shoes, I wouldn't be able to take me back. What am I going to do now? I have no home and no clothes. Mom, don't blame yourself. I share some of the blame, and you can stay with us until your house is repaired. We will buy you new clothes this afternoon and have you settled in by evening. Brandy, all my artwork, paintings, and sculptures are gone. 30 years of marriage and 2 decades of my artistic creations have been destroyed, leaving me completely alone. I have nothing left to live for. Maggie. Jason, is that you? Hi, Maggie. How are you? Jason, where are you? Please come home. We have to talk. No, Maggie, I already know everything from your daughter. Yes, your daughter, not mine. You are both dead to me, and this may be our last conversation. Jason, please don't say that I love you. You should know that, Jason. The studio is gone. Gone. Did you do this, Maggie? You didn't do it to me, maybe not physically, but it burned from your deceit and betrayal when I saw your wedding rings discarded. And you give yourself to another. In my heart you died. Your actions are unforgivable, and Bry's involvement is humiliating and beyond understanding. Beyond comprehension. We are finished. I will meet with lawyers on Monday to initiate proceedings. Please, Jason, can't we talk and resolve this? You can't just throw away our 30 wonderful years like this. Maggie is talking, and I am not the one who threw away our 30 wonderful years you planned. Betrayal showered me with 2 weeks of affection to assuage your guilt, and then betrayed me with the help of your daughter. There is no person on this earth who could accept or forgive such treachery and betrayal. It was pure evil, and I hope you regret it for the rest of your miserable life. Maggie, Jason. No, wait. Jason. Jason was gone, and so was the world I cherished. Brandy arrived just as I was on the phone with Jason, who had already hung up. We hugged and cried for our loss. We finally realized we couldn't stay in the wreckage of my house while the fire and police did their investigation, so we went to Bry's house. When she arrived, she filled Mike in, shocking him with the details. Brandy tried to explain it all, but when Mike found out his wife had set up a date for her boyfriend's father with her own mother, he was both horrified and furious. Brandy, you set up a date for your mom with Another man, knowing Dad would be left alone, you should have known he would never do that. What kind of man lets his wife go on a date with someone else? Is that what you plan to do when we're older? Will you willingly cheat on me like Mom did to Dad? He was such a great guy, and you and Mom were his whole world. What have you done, Brandy? I can't tell you how disappointed I am in you, Brandy. I'm going to reach out to him and apologize for your stupidity. When this is all over, you and I need to talk about our future together. Having children with you is on hold until I find out where you stand. Where you stand, I'll be straight with you. I don't share your values and I won't stand for this kind of betrayal. His anger shocked her. She was surprised at his lack of understanding of her mother's situation. It was just one date after 30 years of marriage, for heaven's sake. So what? Later she realized the real issue was the end of her parents' marriage, her father's loss, and her mother's shattered happiness. Soon, they would all face the consequences of their actions. 5 long days later, I returned home to assess the damage. I decided not to file an insurance claim to avoid more potential costs. In my meeting with my lawyer, Maggie could have half our savings, but no child support. If she resisted, I would sue for adultery, exposing her affair with her daughter's friend's father. Divorce papers were already in motion. I also sought advice on criminal arson charges, but learned that without an insurance claim, it would likely not go forward unless I made a false report. A neighbor who Brandy went to school with called her when she saw me return home and go inside. Brandy rushed over to me as I assessed the damage. Dad, where are you? Bree's voice echoed through the house as she entered. I remained silent, concentrating on assessing the damage and looking out the window at the pile of ashes that had once been Maggie's sanctuary. I couldn't help but smile. Brandy found me in one of the bedrooms and ran over and hugged me. Daddy, I'm so sorry. Please forgive us. We love you. Brandy, I can't forgive any of you. I've already told you not to talk to me anymore. Please let me go and leave me alone. You say you're my daughter, and I have to forgive you. Listen to me. You say you're my daughter, and I have to forgive you. Listen, you're not my daughter anymore. You're just a deceitful person who broke my heart. Now leave me alone. Dad, Mom needs you. She lives with us and misses you terribly. She cries all the time and wants to apologize to you for her mistake. Can you come to our house and see her? When she went on that date and stayed with another man, our marriage ended. She even left her wedding rings behind, sealing the end of our marriage. It is done, and I will not speak to her again. Both of you can reach me through my lawyer. I will get a new phone and number today. But for now, you should go and be with your cheating mother. Are you really willing to throw away 30 years of happiness with Mom? No, not me. Your mother threw away those 30 years as soon as she took off her rings and went to her lover. It was you and your mother who destroyed my 30 years of happiness. Brandy ran out of her childhood home in tears. Her father's words declaring that she was no longer his daughter were devastating. Even years of therapy could not erase the pain of his words. The next day, Maggie received divorce papers and crumbled. Realizing her affair had ended her marriage, she tried to reason, went to counseling, and tried to talk to Jason. But all efforts were fruitless. He cut off contact with her, and Brandy Mike eventually reached Jason, expressing anger and disappointment over their actions. He reconsidered having children due to Bree's disloyalty and is currently in couples counseling to save their marriage. Maggie hoped to return home after Jason rebuilt it, but the divorce stated it was his. She received half her savings and $3. After 30 years of relying on Jason, she moved from her daughter's house to a small apartment near downtown and worked at an art gallery to make ends meet. Maggie's artistic freedom was suddenly in jeopardy. She would no longer spend all her time in Jason's beautiful studio, nor could she sit in front of her art projects and enjoy the lake view from the large windows her husband had given her. Would consume her, leaving no free time to reclaim her old life. All her free time gone, along with luxury and marital bliss, all for one reckless night with another man. She would never have enough tears to erase the hurt caused by this one mistake. No, Jason, her loving husband, would never speak to her again. Hearing him disown their daughter shattered Bree's heart. She sank into depression over her parents' separation to save her own now crumbling marriage. She sought help from a therapist. Months later, the house was fixed. Jason kept up with court-ordered payments, then sold the house. After the sale, Maggie came to reconcile, only to find a young couple at the door. "Hello, can we help you?" the woman asked. "I'm looking for Jason Spencer. Is he here?" "No. He sold us this house and left for a new life. He left an envelope for you. I'll read it later." "Goodbye and enjoy your new home," Maggie said, tears streaming down her face as she realized she would never see Jason again and regretted the love she had carelessly lost in her lonely apartment. She opened the letter with trembling hands. "Maggie, 3 decades, and to think I could have spent that time more productively, like watching paint dry or counting the blades of grass on our lawn. It's funny, really, how I once thought I could never be the husband you needed. Clearly what you needed was a circus, not a partner. Considering your antics, you wanted more. Well, congratulations on finally finding it outside of our marriage. Bravo. For those 2 weeks you played the doting wife again. You should have known it was just the calm before the storm. A prelude to your grand betrayal. Oh, I was duped, thoroughly fooled by your Oscar-worthy performance here. I planned a special night to celebrate us. While you were out celebrating yourself with someone else, you didn't just break us, Maggie. You nuked us from orbit. So I did us both a favor and disappeared. A favor and disappeared. That's right. I left the circus to the clowns and moved on to greener pastures. Don't bother trying to find me. I'm buried under layers of new cities and faces that don't include yours or our daughters. Start over. You bet it's time in a drama-free zone. Free zone, and as for our home, consider it just another casualty in your war of selfishness. Sell it. Maybe the new owners can cleanse it of the stench of betrayal. You want closure. Consider this letter. Wrap it up, tie it with a bow, and shove it in the back of the closet where you keep all your other ill-advised decisions. Here's to your new beginnings. Maggie, may they may be as fleeting as your loyalty. Goodbye to the man who once loved you. JS. She thought she was out of tears, but after reading his note she couldn't stop crying all night, hugging her knees tightly. The thrill and memories of the wonderful times with Alexander faded, now overtaken by regret and sadness. Now at 52 and alone, she realized her days without Jason looked grim. Grimly, she traded her lavish lifestyle for a moment of reckless pleasure. Jason confronted Alexander late at night, just as he was about to leave for his new place in Ecuador. When the door swung open, Jason burst in and revealed that he was the husband of the woman Alexander had taken from him. Alexander tried to justify that he believed Maggie was okay with it and wouldn't have gone after her otherwise, but it was all in vain. Jason wouldn't hear of it. The encounter was brief as Jason resorted to using a crowbar, and within seconds, Alexander's life had been drastically changed. Before Jason left for his waiting Uber to catch a flight out of the country, leaving Alexander with a warning about the dangers of getting involved with a married woman. By the time Alexander got to the emergency room and reported the assault, Jason was already settled into his beachfront apartment in Manabi, starting over without the burdens of his past and his family. It took detectives 2 weeks to learn that Jason had left the country, and they realized that even if they found him, they couldn't go after him if he didn't come back. Ecuador doesn't extradite for assault charges. Sadly, the 25 stitches on his face would always remind him of that night and the married woman. Uncertain of his future, he knew his old life was gone because of the 2 women who convinced him to steal another man's wife. He never contacted Maggie or Brandy again. Bree's husband, Mike, almost left her because of what happened, but a psychologist helped Brandy see the error of her ways, and she vowed to be faithful to Mike and their future. Mike waited almost 2 years before deciding to have children, needing to be sure that his wife would not betray him as she had done to her own father. And keeping his promise and her guilt in mind, Jason severed all ties with Brandy because of her actions. She lost her father's affection forever. When Maggie and Brandy found out about Alexander's assault, they were heartbroken and felt guilty for their role in the violence. On top of the remorse and pain they had already caused Jason and the breakup of their family, it was yet another sign that their choices had consequences they hadn't imagined. They discovered that their foolish hope that allowing Maggie this one indiscretion would make their lives happy was completely misguided. Their mistake showed that happiness was far from reality. The absence of their father and husband brought them lasting grief, a burden she would carry forever. Overwhelmed by sadness and aging, she never met another partner and led a life filled with loneliness and regret. Her dreams of growing old with Jason and enjoying time with her grandchildren became mere memories when Jason stopped child support after leaving the country. Her financial stability was shaky, forcing her to work to make ends meet. Nightly tears became her new norm. I now have over $750. With this wealth, I look forward to a comfortable and peaceful life here in Ecuador for the next 30 years. The young, attractive local women appreciate a generous American, and I enjoy their company for half a year after that. That terrible night, sitting on the beach across from my new home in Port P. Lopez with a cold beer, I realized that divorce is a part of life. It is fine to separate. It is fine to be on your own. What is not fine is to stay where you are not respected or appreciated. I will make sure I never find myself in that situation again.